Hey everybody, we're back here with objective 132. Students will be able to solve tax problems, specifically involving an actual tax added and markup problems. So we're focusing on a particular type of tax problems, tax added and markups, okay? Before we start problem one, I want to remind you about our CUS acronym, just a good way to make word problems and solving word problems a little bit easier. Recall that the C stands for circle, the question. And also, when you circle that question, take a second to process what you're being asked to solve. We've seen students who circle it really well, but then don't end up answering the question. So make sure once you circle it, you take a second to process, what do I have to figure out? Next to you is underline, important information. Once you have an idea of what you have to answer, you're going to underline all the stuff you need to answer that question. The first S stands for solve. So once you feel like you have the important information and you know what you're answering, give it a shot and try to solve. And last is a quick sanity check. That means, like, does my answer make any sense? So looking at example one, we have Shantanese is buying a t-shirt at the mall. The t-shirt costs $20. There is a 5% tax. What is the tax on the t-shirt? I'm going to circle that. That's what I'm trying to answer. And notice how I'm trying to figure out what is just the tax on the t-shirt. It did not ask for what is the total cost of the t-shirt. What are you actually going to pay? It just wants to know what is the tax on the t-shirt. As I go back through, I'm definitely going to need to know that the t-shirt costs $20. I also need to know that there's going to be a 5% tax added on. And before we hop in and try to solve this, I think it's important to remind ourselves conceptually, like, what's going on here. Remember that a tax means a percent of whatever you're going to buy, a percent of that value, then added back on to the original cost to, like, result in an even larger amount you have to pay. So a tax is percent of the value added on. That value, it could be anything you're purchasing. It could be chips at a store. It could be clothing. Anything you purchase that's going to have a tax, it's going to be a percent of that value that's then added back on to that value to increase how much you pay for it. So, okay, and that tax goes to our government to do a lot of things that we're going to talk about in class. Alright, so in this problem, the shirt costs $20 and there's a 5% tax. So let's just figure out that idea first, okay? If I have a shirt that costs $20 and I want to figure out how much the tax is worth, like 5% of that, well, just like we've been working on in class, I want to find out what is 5% of 20. So I'm going to multiply these together. I have 20 times as a decimal, that's going to be 0.05. If I do 5%, means per 100. 5 divided by 100 is 0.05. I'm going to multiply the value of the item, that $20, times the tax. And that results in $1. And this one's cool. That actually is the answer to our question, what is the value of the tax? Well, right there. The tax on the t-shirt is $1. 5% of 20. That's the extra dollar you're going to pay for this item that then goes to the government.
So for example 2, we are going to, again, circle the question. Here, our question is asking us to find the final price of the video game rounded to the nearest dollar. So before I even start an equation with using only operations and numbers and variables, I'm going to write out logically what actually is happening in this story. So if I'm looking for a final price, or a total price, right, I need to know what is contributing to my total or final price. So reading the question says, Isaiah is buying a new video game at the mall. The video game costs $40. So we know we have to pay for the cost of a 6.5% tax. Now, Mr. Riggs just mentioned that tax is a percent of what you owe. So we are going to also add on a tax. We always pay taxes on what we buy. So now I need to go ahead and fill out what I know. Well, we know that the cost of the video game is 40. So I can go ahead and write down 40. I also know that there is a tax. Well, I know that there is a 6.5% tax. So 6.5% as a decimal. I'm going to use my handy dandy trick of moving the decimal back 2 spaces to the left. This will be 0.065. Now, a percent of a value depends on what the value is. If I found 10% of 100, that's 10. If I found 10% of 1,000, that's 100, right? So it does depend on what you owe. So 6.5% of 40 is what we would put there. And that should give us our total price. Now, let's go ahead and do the math. 6.5% of 40 is 2.6. We're going to go ahead and bring 40 down. 40 plus 2.6 is 42.60. And I'm just going to say 60 because it is money. Okay? Now, it says round to the nearest dollar, so I want to make sure I go back to the question and make sure that I actually answered what it's asking. So it asks for the total price. I've got that rounded to the nearest dollar. I'm looking at the whole dollar, or the ones place. Looking to my right, 6 is greater than 4, so this should be $43. Although realistically, people are not rounding money because that would be pretty sad if someone said you owe me $42.60, but let's just round up to 43. Whenever you're solving a word problem, we want to make sure that you're actually understanding what you are setting up. So before you build your equation, we need to see this mathematical sentence that shows that you logically know what is going on and that your equation is representing the actual story and you're not just making up your own pieces. So make sure you have this part, and you go ahead and solve through.
Notice how on number 2, we answered the question, but there's this bonus question down here. Be sure you also answer that. We're going to move ahead now in the notes. Be sure right now that you draw a smiley face by the objective title. So where it says objective 132, please draw a smiley face. Alright, so we're here on page 9. The rest of the problems that we skipped over, be sure to do those on your own. That's part of your homework. We're going to do this one markup problem, pretty much to show you that tax and markup operate the exact same way. When you read the word markup, you should think in your head, that means the exact same thing as tax. Like markup and tax mathematically work the exact same way. And the words markup and tax are synonyms. It means they mean the exact same thing. So reading question 1, Shantanese is buying a t-shirt in New York City. The t-shirt costs $20 wholesale. The shop marks the t-shirt up 10%. What is the final price of the t-shirt rounded to the nearest cent? I'm going to start with that question. I'm also going to just underline this part. That's a big extra point we need to make sure we do is round to the nearest cent. As I go back through, I need to underline all the information to help me figure this out. The t-shirt costs $20 wholesale, and the shop marks it up by 10%. That means whatever it costs, 10% of that value, I'm going to pay that extra 10% value to make that total price. So like my end price will be more than just the $20 I see here. So imagine I have this total price. That total price is equal to the original cost of the t-shirt, so that's $20, plus 10% of that 20. That's what's going to be my eventual.
Mr. Riggs, can you write original cost?
Absolutely. And as a general rule, it's always a good idea to give your numbers meaning. That makes it clear to us that we understand that you understand. And also, like, if a stranger were to look at your problem, like, they would understand exactly what you're doing. Like, this 20 represents the original cost of the t-shirt. Now, to figure out the total price, I'm going to multiply this original cost by 0.1. This term right here, this represents, I'll say markup. This is the cost of just the t-shirt being marked up. So whatever we get here, this represents the extra you're going to pay, the markup value. And I got that 0.1. This 0.1 is 10%, the exact same value. So now I'm going to figure out the total price of this t-shirt. I'm going to label just total price for TP. I have my 20 plus 0.1 times 2 is just 2. So my total price here, just total, is going to be equal to $22. And notice how we were asked to round to the nearest cents. Well, the cents place is actually the hundredths place. That's the cents value. Since we're already rounded to a whole number, like, we're good. We don't have to, like, round any extra. Our final answer is going to be $22. That's all we're going to do with you. Like, whatever you were assigned in class, be sure you do that for homework tonight, and we'll see you next time.